artillery and get 2. That's important right now. Do I actually want to? Think about this. I think I do. I could just get the 1 and get like, or I could get a tank, but I don't want to stick with tanks. I could get a Fang. Wait a second. Aha! He's not staying idle. He won't just sit by and let us win. Counter him. One more good volley before that tower goes down. That's pretty good. Maybe even one more. Come on! Tower was down before the shells all landed. He was worried about flanks last turn too, so he spent 100 on that, which I didn't do. I usually do. And then he flanked me, which now that'll be summoned in. So I no longer have the advantage of that too. So next round, we gotta work a little harder here. Got the tower. It's nice. Could just get underground threat and get a free win here. I'm gonna go tech, because we're about to buy tech. I'm gonna get the overload. There's a good chance we're going to be upgrading arc lights over the tanks. That's why we chose that right there. Big smile. Good question. So who was the last prophet? I like to put these up here whenever we have something that might lead into more conversation. I like to have it. So the question: who was the last prophet? For the end times, are we going to get more? So obviously, you know, the question is going to be within Christianity, because, say, for example, Islam is going to say Muhammad was a prophet, that sort of thing. But within Christianity, who was the last prophet? Technically, Jesus himself has the office, the role of prophet, as well as priest, as well as king, ruler. He actually has all 3 offices. So technically, Jesus is a prophet. He gets to speak for God, which is obvious because he is God. At least that would be if you're a Christian. As far as more traditionally prophets, Malachi, Old Testament prophet. There was a gap of 400 years between the New and the Old Testament, and a lot happened. It's called the silent years because the Bible doesn't have much to say about it, because it's basically all the plan is on pause until God is ready. But a lot happens during those 400 years. You have Israel. It ends with Israel under the rulership of Persia, which was a benevolent rulership. They set them free from Babylon. Ooh, this is tempting. But during those years that the Bible is no longer talking about, it prophesies that you're going to have Greece and Rome come along, and sure enough, they do. Greece, Alexander the Great comes along, conquers Persia. Rome comes along, conquers Greece. Of course, Greece also split up into 4 kingdoms, and that's prophesied too. That's in the book of Daniel. It's fascinating. It's all there. But it's things that, like, a lot changes, and so essentially it's all kind of a waiting game until that's all settled. So what happens is, as a result of Alexander the Great, everyone in the world for the first time has a common language, koine, common Greek. Koine means common. And so this is like the first time in human history since the Tower of Babel that everyone can speak the same language. And so that serves the purpose of getting the gospel message out. And for the first time since Tower of Babel, basically the Mediterranean known world, the world around the people of Israel, is all united under one flag, the flag of Rome. Like, you basically have Persia and Greece, and although they were the first like superpowers, but they never quite got everything, not in the way Rome did. And so Rome, through force, did bring about the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, the ability for somebody who is of one nationality to cross all boundaries freely. If you've got your citizenship and all that, you could go all around the empire, no problem. Similarly, here in the United States, where I can cross state boundaries and don't have to worry about a passport, like, that's not normal. And it could have been very different, or in Europe, going across all the European country boundaries. Most of European history, like, the countries that have a big problem of you leaving your country and going to the next country without asking first. Nowadays you can, and so that's a major difference. And Rome was kind of the first time that happened, where all these former countries are now essentially states under Rome. And so now everyone speaks the same language, and now you can go wherever you want to go, and God says, okay, this is the timing that I've been waiting for, now I can send Jesus. And so that would be all of that. And so the final prophet of the Old Testament, Malachi, basically says, okay, here's what you're going to be waiting for. He doesn't say how long, but you're waiting for essentially one to come out of the wilderness who will say, make ready, make straight the way for the Lord. And they're basically saying he's going to come in the power of Elijah. He's going to be like a great prophet of old, but he's going to be a new guy. And we know that to be John the Baptist. And his role as a prophet there would be preaching about Jesus, following in his footsteps. He's preparing everyone for him. He's actually Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist is. Humanly speaking, through the Jesus' parents. So it's fascinating how we get to all that. I should have done the smoke bomb. Here, let's actually do our oil. Trump not being the prophet? No, not Trump. Now, again, Christianity, there's a lot of variety within Christianity. A lot of good, like, well-meaning and yet misguided teachings in Christianity. Like, not biblical, but it happens. And so there's that. There's going to be and plenty of disagreement. That's why there's all these denominations. Like, Christians are really good at arguing with each other. And one of those things is going to be that there are some denominations who will preach that there are prophets today, that's a thing going on. And so, if you were to ask somebody of that persuasion, they would say they're still going on right now. Well, the second part of your question was, would there be any more prophets before end times? And again, technically, yes, but probably not in a way that anyone would recognize them as such, because that tended to be when they were normally around. So, it's okay for all of the denominations to be wrong. Yeah, exactly. So basically, it's part of the end times. Part of the end times. We have prophecy through the book of Revelation. It talks about that there will be two witnesses, as in people who will not observe but declare what they know. Okay, in that I am sharing my testimony as a witness in a courtroom type witness, as opposed to I am here to watch and observe witness. So there will be two witnesses, people who will essentially give news, give instruction, give information, and they will have the similar roles and similar powers to the Old Testament prophets. Some speculate, we do not know, but some speculate that they are in fact a couple of the Old Testament prophets. Moses and Elijah are usually your top two candidates. And that might, it might be, but the fact is we don't know, and so that's the important thing to emphasize, is that it's speculation, but it's fun to speculate. So at end times, yes, we will have a couple more with some important things to tell us. And basically at that point, it's not really good news, because at that point we're already in end times. We're already in what is called the tribulation. There's going to be divine judgment happening on the earth. It's not going to be a pretty picture, and so you know, that the reality is that they're not, their witnessing is not going to be news that you're going to want to hear. In fact, to the point where according to Revelation, those two witnesses, they will be bringing with them essentially like a taste of God's judgment to come. Like they're basically going to be bringing the bad news to the point where it feels like they're a nuisance, a menace. People don't like them being around because they're always telling us bad news we don't want to hear. And they might even be miraculously performing signs that are things that they don't want to hear. Picture Moses showing up in Pharaoh's court and saying, hey, you need to let God's people go. Pharaoh says no. Okay, plague of frogs. Pharaoh doesn't like it every time Moses shows up. There's always another plague following in this guy. So it's going to be kind of like that, where the people will not like these guys, to the point where halfway through the 7-year end time tribulation, they get murdered. And everyone in the whole world is going to be rejoicing over this thing, except for the fact that at the end of like the week-long celebration, God's going to resurrect them, and they're going to be back to doing their thing. And so it's going to be quite the scene. Quite the scene. It's Mr. Drewski and Dave from above on Twitter. Tell us what's going on. Oh, the two witnesses. Maybe. Enforcing religion through secular laws? On the surface, yes. But, and this bear with me. If we don't have, this is from a Western Judeo-Christian society view, right? So Europe and the Americas, North America, you know, like this is the perspective. Our cultures are based off of the Judeo-Christian morality. Now, we might not have a lot of that anymore. It's changing, but it is based off of it. And so when we talk about laws and things, we're passing laws on making, like, this is right, this is wrong. Based on what? Like, on what basis is something right and wrong? How did society decide that it's right and wrong? Well, the Judeo-Christian society, like, fundamentally is based off of the Judeo-Christian worldview that certain things are right and certain things are wrong. Some of that holds true across the whole world. Not all. Some of it holds true. And so, but in that sense, religion is going to be a cause for various laws that are there, because they're basically the reason why we believe something to be right and wrong. If evolution is true, might makes right. There's no justification for, if there's no God, there's no lawgiver, then there's no, oh, we're getting rushed again. Then there's no reason for law, because might makes right. That's like the law of evolution. So we take for granted that there is a lawgiver. Hey, we didn't get rushed. And so from that, it's we have the morality that we claim is in thanks to the Judeo-Christian worldview. So you have that. Like, so that's what I mean. Like, on the surface, I don't think somebody can go around and say, okay, by law you must be a Christian. Like, that's not going to work. That doesn't even work in Christianity. You can't force somebody to become a believer in their heart. Like, that's the opposite of what Christianity does. There's certainly a lot of history where people tried that. It's not what the Bible would have them do, but they tried. And then there's going to be other religions who try that too. So if that's what you mean by by the law enforcing the religion, but the law itself, the morality based off of what is right, what is wrong, theft is wrong, murder is wrong, all these things. Where did we come to that conclusion? We came to that conclusion in our society because of the fundamental values of the Old Testament, particularly the Ten Commandments. That's why a lot of courthouses used to have like statues of the Ten Commandments there, until more recently when everyone protested about everything, and they're mostly gone now. But that was the reasoning for it, was because that is the fundamental basis as to where all that came from, where our values of right and wrong comes from. Oh, sure, tribes, but then if you think about it, the tribe will have boundaries within the tribe, right? But then they didn't have any problem with going over to the other tribe and taking all their stuff, right? Like, might makes right. Like, maybe, yeah, murder, theft. So, like, within a tribe, in order for the tribe to function, we outlaw murder and theft within the tribe. But then we get all together as a tribe and go murder and steal from the other tribe next door. We don't see that as wrong until Judeo-Christianity comes along. That was the big difference. That was the change. And of course, it wasn't always tribes. It becomes countries and all that sort of thing. Yeah, the tribes increase to become states, countries, and unions. Yes, but then, so again, why do we have countries who state in like their constitutions things that here's our fundamental values, here's what gives us the basis of our rights? You know, the Bill of Rights and stuff in the U.S. You know, the Constitution. Like we've got a foundation to say this is what we're appealing to as the basis. It's a higher power. Each man is given these inalienable rights from God. It's not given from the government. If it's given from the government can take it back away. It's saying no, this is something higher than even government, and therefore the government cannot take it away. And that's the whole premise of the constitutional rights. Whether people even read the thing anymore is another subject. And Blue, okay, so I'm not disagreeing with that. I was just trying to point out a nuance. So, if I were to be proposing some law that, you know, I would lean more towards a libertarian viewpoint, right? Where I can't legislate morality. I could legislate something to prevent you from harming others. That's a good thing. Don't go and murder people. That's a law, right? But I can't legislate you from not wanting to, right? Biblically, you're not to hate your brother. Okay? You're not to have hatred in your heart for your brother. That is a biblical law, right? Like Jesus says, if you hate your brother, it's the same thing as murder. God is looking at that as murder. So don't hate your brother. The law can say don't actually murder. The law can't say don't hate your brother. If we try to enforce that, like let's say somehow we can, but let's say we try to enforce that's going to be beyond the scope of what government can do. But people will try. I agree. People will try, and they shouldn't. So yeah, forcing somebody. You know, there's plenty of countries throughout history, even present day, where, like, you know, it's when you say a country is a certain religion, it's not just by tradition. Like America traditionally is called a Christian nation. We talked about yesterday. I don't think they ever even necessarily were, but you know, traditionally it's called a Christian nation. You have some though. If you're like by law, you have to be the religion of the state, like the state religion. And Christians have had that in history. There's plenty of religions that do that now even. And so, like, that's a thing. It doesn't make it okay. That's a thing, and that shouldn't be a thing. Like, especially if in Christianity, where the whole point, as I'm trying to say, was, like, that you can't force somebody to believe. It has to be their own conviction to believe. Which is why I like to engage you guys with discussion rather than saying turn or burn. That doesn't get anyone anywhere, right? I would like to engage your mental faculties and have a good discussion and get you thinking, and you guys get me thinking. And so, you know, we all benefit from that. I think that accomplishes a lot more than just getting on a soapbox, shouting, having that big old vein pop out in the forehead, and you know, spit coming out of the mouth and pointing the finger, and that, you know, that's theatrical, but it's not actually doing anybody any good. If because there are historically, like, that sort of thing, like, people do emotionally respond to that sort of thing. Like, people do, you know, the preacher gets up there and he's spitting and he's shouting and people come forward, and that's a thing. But once the emotional event is over, the excitement is gone, did that person make a genuine life-changing decision, or were they following the moment? Right? Similarly, you know, this just pops in my mind as an example, marriage. A lot of marriages are made as a emotional decision, not a willful decision. I will marry you because I have the warm fuzzies, butterfly in my stomach feelings whenever I'm around you, and yet 10 years down the line, you don't look the same, you know, you whatever, you might have these, you know, different looks. Money's a problem, you know, we have these conflicts, we're raising kids, and all of that emotion is gone. And if there was no foundational basis by which you're making that decision, well, the marriage is gone, right? Like, that's maybe not the best example, but I'm trying to get the idea across that Christianity is a lot more than the emotional decision of somebody coming forward because somebody else was shouting at them for an hour. I like to engage in discussion. I like people to think for themselves and of their own will come to a conclusion, not through manipulation. I hope that's a fair way to say everything.